Hey Deadgrinners, this is your boy Deadgrin bringing you another episode of Deadgrin Customs. Now, if you've been following me and if you've been following this particular series, this is for my custom Dabura action figure. And I've used a WWE Elite big cast for the base. I ended up using Milliput putty, the yellow one, standard, to mold everything. Like I said, like throughout the whole videos, I've shaved down all the points of articulation where there was going to be some paint rub. I took off the muscle detail on the legs, and then I used the Milliput to sculpt the tips of the shoes, the pants, the belt, the shirt, and the little thing that goes around his neck. The face itself comes from a World Collectible figure, Dabura. Unfortunately, it was a bootleg, like Kenny Boy says. Unfortunately, this is a bootleg. That's not the World Collectible figure head. Obviously, that's from another figure, but he usually says it with smashing something. Quick little shout out to Kenny Boy. You guys should check him out. He does some amazing customs. He's been working on a Jiren and a battle damage Jiren and a Hakaishin Topo. These last, basically, in 1 week, he basically knocked out both, which is fucking amazing speed. But anyways, it's taken me about 2 weeks for this figure. I'm still not 100% done either. The reason why it took so long was because I mostly waited for that damn Dabura head. The thing with that Dabura head, for everybody who, has been following the series, the face itself, the head shape is perfect. Everything was perfect. The only thing that kind of pissed me off was the eyes. It wasn't, the eyes were round instead of more serpentine. The mustache and beard weren't, matching where the lines were. It was off center, and then you couldn't see his sinister grin. I kind of used a little bit of matte paint to bring out some of the shading, so he looks a little bit extra sinister. So, last time you guys saw this figure, it was basically the actual wrestling figure with all the Milliput over him. From that last time, I finished the sculpting, and I've added some layers, of paint. Now, I'm not the most, I don't use the most expensive stuff to be able to do my customs. I do them on a very cheap budget. The cast, I found it from a clearance section off in Walmart. The Milliput is about $7 on Amazon, and I don't use Vallejo or Citadel or Testers paints. I use just Folk Art or Apple Barrel. I know they're not the best paints to use for this kind of stuff. You usually have to put like 3 or 4 layers just to be able to make it good, and even then it still kind of flakes off. I use a Krylon matte finish to like seal everything. I haven't sealed this one only because it's not done yet, but now the reason why I bring all this up is because from the last time to this time, the figure looks almost like, there's a huge difference. Now it looks like a damn Dragon Ball figure. Before, it just looked like a weird figure with some like Milliput sculpting on it. But anyways, yeah, like I was actually talking with Kenny Boy about this. You don't have to use Dragon Ball figures to make Dragon Ball figures. Like, it's a lot easier, I'll be honest, like using the Dragon Stars or SH Figure Arts or Figure Rise Standards or or maybe even the Irwin figures, or whatever, you know, whatever scale you really want to use of existing Dragon Ball figures to make other Dragon Ball figures, I understand, you know, like obviously I still keep using, you know, World Collectible figureheads just because it goes so well with almost every scale from like 6 inches up. But anyways, you know, you can look for other avenues, other action figures to make Dragon Ball figures. Case in point, I'm using a WWE Elite figure to make my Dragon Ball Dabura figure. Kenny Boy is using, you know, Toy Biz Hulk for his Topo, you know. He's using a Kiniko Man to make his Jiren. You can look outside of Dragon Ball existing lines to be able to make. You can even use Marvel Legends, you know, like to make these kinds of figures. All it takes is your imagination, you know, and just time, you know. You take your time to be able to make these. Don't try to make, you know, these figures like in a day, unless you already basically know what you're gonna do. You know, if you're new to this, take your time, you know, envision it, maybe even draw it out if you need to. You know, I know a lot of guys, some of the best customizers, draw them out before they actually put it on a figure, like Craig Warwick, for example. You should check out his channel. He does amazing, the best. He's my favorite he's my favorite customizer in general. You know, but a lot of people, you know, you have to visualize it first. The paint, like, even with these cheap paints, I think this looks way better than not having paint at all. You know, like, especially if you can match the paint, you know, like the body doesn't match completely the face, only because it's one layer. I'm gonna probably, with these cheap paints, I'll probably end up using about 3 or 4 coats to make it completely perfect the way that I want it, and then, you know, use a Krylon matte finish to coat to be able to completely protect the paint. I'm almost done with this figure. All it needs is the puffs around the shoulders and the cape. And I stopped by Walmart and I ended up getting, you know, some costume satin. That's the one I prefer to use costume satin, only because it's flexible, and, you know, it the texture is pretty nice, and it comes in all different kinds of colors. And you can just, you know, if you have an airbrush, you can use it to kind of like texturize the actual, you know, fabric. But I'm just gonna use probably some dry brushing and stuff to be able to give it a little bit of texture, make it fit more with you know, the actual form of the figure. But yeah, guys, you know, I'm kind of ranting on, you know, throwing off a little stuff, but I mean, he's looking great. He scales perfectly, like I said before, with the Gohan, you know, and I hope I can get some shots with Dabura facing off against my great Saiyaman. You know, easily one of the most underrated fights in the Dragon Ball Z. You know, you could argue with me about that, but definitely one of my favorite ones. The setup was awesome. Dabura was a pretty awesome character. His techniques were crazy. That fire breath, the spit that turned people into rocks, and being able to use that sword, and his hand swipes were able to cut through things like a sword. Freaking awesome, man. And then, you know, Gohan had never faced anybody like that, and Gohan himself was pretty rusty in the fight, and it was very evident, but it was also awesome, man. You guys should try to check that out if you don't remember how the actual fight went. But anyways, yeah, you know, like, I'm close to finishing this figure, guys. I'm getting back on the Great Saiyaman right after it. You know, the only reason why I'm, you know, focusing more on this guy than this guy was because this was for a customer. This one isn't. This one's based on a poll that I took, you know, on Twitter. Also, you know, like I said before, guys, you guys should hit me up on Twitter, Instagram. You know, I use those for to show off some of the process, you know, behind the scenes process on these customs a little bit more in detail. You're able to see pictures and ask me directly, you know, how I do things, and I'd be able to explain it. But anyways, so yeah, guys, you know, that's my update video for my Dabura. If you like this video, please, you know, smash that like button, you know, subscribe, share the video with your friends. If you do subscribe, make sure to hit the notification bell to be able to keep up with every other custom that I make. And you're watching this in the morning, you know, good morning, and for everybody else, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.